one of the faces of boxing, maybe even the face of boxing, a legend in Canelo Alvarez is returning to the ring on September 14th against a young and hungry competitor in Edgar Berlanga. A fight that, yes, it's not the big-time fights we want Canelo to face, aka a David Benavidez or a Terrence Crawford, but Canelo is back in the ring, and as I say, it's always great to see our stars back in the ring, especially Canelo. We don't know how long he has left in the sport of boxing. Grown older in age, not too old yet, but has not that many fights left in front of him. But we'll see one here on September 14th in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena, a fight that is going up against a UFC card at the Sphere. But before we get into this video, make sure comment below what do you think about this fight. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the Never Drop podcast for all your boxing news. Let's get into this fight. Canelo Alvarez, what more do I have to say? A living legend in the sport of boxing. 61-2, 39 knockouts. When you think about boxing at the moment, Canelo Alvarez is one of those top 3 names you're thinking of. I'm not saying right now top 3 as in case of best fighter. I'm saying in one of the faces. You think of Canelo Alvarez, Gervonta Tank Davis, maybe Naoya Inoue, Terrence Crawford. Those 4 right now. When you think about boxing, mainly the 2, Canelo and Tank Davis. Canelo's back in the ring. Canelo back fighting in September. You know how he does it. Fights in May and September. That's his schedule for the year. Let's talk about that May fight he last had. Unanimous decision win over Jaime Munguia. A fight that, for Canelo, it proved a lot to me as I had seen Canelo as getting older. Obviously, that's the case. But in the ring, I feel like you could really see he was getting older. Early on in that Jaime Munguia fight, Munguia was bringing it to Canelo. Granted, he fought at a respectful distance and fought a respectful fight. As even through the build-up of that May fight against Munguia, you could see there was respect for Munguia looking at Canelo as kind of like an idol, I believe. While he brought some of that into the ring, I thought early on in the fight, Munguia was letting his hands go, and I don't know if it was Canelo necessarily taking rounds off or collecting data, but I was thinking, hey, I think Munguia's got a couple rounds here, and if he can continue this, have the stamina throughout the entire night, it'll be a tougher fight for Canelo than he was probably anticipating. Well, what Canelo did in the 4th round changed the fight. Dropped Munguia with a right hand uppercut. Floored Munguia. Munguia looked timid throughout the rest of the fight. It was a shot from Canelo, a terrific counterpuncher. Went with the uppercut. Munguia just never saw it coming. Of course, the punch you don't see is the one that hurts you the most. Munguia never saw it coming. I talked about Munguia fighting a respectful fight. I thought Canelo ended up fighting a respectful fight. There's a couple times I thought he could really press the gas pedal, and Canelo didn't. Let the young Mexican fighter stand on his own 2 feet in the ring with Canelo. As we remember, Canelo talked previously about, I'm not fighting any more Mexican fighters. Of course, then signed the deal with Munguia, fought a Mexican fighter, but I thought he fought a respectful fight against Munguia. Personally, I thought it was a really good performance by Canelo, and a performance that I thought Canelo was kind of, I don't know, we had seen in the past, and we're seeing this more often. He's kind of, in the later rounds of the fight, he's not throwing as much as he used to, and of course, getting up there with age. I'm not saying there's chinks in the armor, but it's not stainless steel as it once was, if you understand what I'm saying. Canelo is still one of those fighters. You're going to have a historical night to beat him, but as he gets older, there's always that chance. Maybe it'll happen tonight. Maybe it'll be tonight. Against Jaime Munguia, he made sure early on in that 4th round, he said, no. Trust me, it's not going to be tonight. Let me hit you with this uppercut and change the entire fight. Showed he still has that power. 168 Canelo still has the power. 34-year-old Canelo still has the power. And I think he might be able to show this power in this fight. Let's talk about his opponent, Edgar Berlanga. He's not a Mexican fighter. He's a Puerto Rico fighter. Mexican versus Puerto Rico going on in this fight. Looking forward to it is Edgar, man. 22-0, 17 knockouts. The knockouts are important. We'll talk about that. His last fight, a TKO win against Patrick McCroy. That was back in February this year. Got him down a couple times in the 6th. Finished it off with a right hand connected. McCroy was on the ropes. Done. Fight over. But for Edgar, I mentioned the 17 knockouts in 22 fights. That was Edgar's first KO in 4 fights. In fact, it was his first knockout since 2021. Of course, you're probably thinking, hey, Canelo hasn't had a knockout in a while. And that's true. But for Edgar, this streak was different because Edgar was on a different streak to start his career. For Edgar, he started his career with 16 straight first round knockouts, not just knockouts in the first round. Rampage. He was signed to, I believe, Top Rank in ESPN during those times. They were building him up, talking about, hey, Mike Tyson. Stuff he's doing is like Mike Tyson, giving him that comparison. Obviously not saying he fights like Mike Tyson, but the power was Mike Tyson-esque. Then what happened was he didn't get the first round knockout. Fought Damon Nicholson in that 2021 fight, got a couple knockdowns, didn't get the knockout. So, okay, that's fine. Eventually it was going to end. Good for him to get rounds going. After that, he kind of struggled. It was like, wait, where does his power go? Wasn't getting the knockouts. Would get a knockdown here or there, not showing the power we thought he had. Obviously, he's fighting more rounds. Defensively, was not looking the sharpest. Got dropped. Well, of course, I'm not a believer that if you get dropped once, it shows you're chinny. I believe that, hey, you just got dropped. Your defense, you leaked in a defensive position, and it got exposed. But for Edgar, it was looking different. It was, where does power go? And wow, his defense is not that great. But he's able to overcome all that, get that TKO, start this year, becomes the WBA mandatory challenger, enacts that, and here we are, heading towards September 14th. And again, I know this is not a fight that a lot of people want to see. I understand it. I would like to see Canelo Alvarez in the ring versus David Benavidez. But at the moment, this is the fight we have at 168. Let's look at the tail of the tape. Both orthodox fighters. Height is going to be in the favor of Berlanga. He's 6'1", opposed to Canelo's 5'7.5". He's going to have way more than just a few inches in the height department with Canelo. Reach, not that much different though. There is a difference, but not as big as the height. 73-inch reach for Berlanga, 70.5 for Canelo. Age range here, 34 Canelo, 27 Berlanga. But, well, some might say, oh, that might be in Edgar's favor because of the 7 years younger he is. That's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to go opposite. That's 7 more years of experience Canelo Alvarez has. And I think experience is going to play a huge factor in this fight. Again, I think one of the big things when you talk about experience is that ring walk. Edgar Berlanga has never had a ring walk where he's walking to that ring first, where the crowd is, 1, going to be booing him. 2, there's going to be that many people in the stands. He's going to have a fight week come the week of the fight, like none other that he's had. And that moment where the lights shine the brightest, that's where experience matters. Canelo's done this. He's done this on stages 10 times bigger than this. He's looking to get to those stages 10 times bigger than this. This is another night in the ring for Canelo. I think experience plays a huge factor in this, but one thing I'll give Edgar props for, the build-up to this fight. 2 press conferences they had. First in New York City, he was calm, respectful, similar to how Jermell Charlo was and Jaime Munguia were. Okay, they understand they're fighting Canelo Alvarez. It's a big deal. They're making a lot of money. They're happy to get the opportunity. But for Berlanga, it just didn't feel right. He's a brash guy. He's going to talk. He's going to say what he wants to say. The respect, it didn't feel right come the LA press conference. It felt right, pause. And I think it's going to help sell this fight. He was trash-talking Canelo. He was trash-talking Caleb Plant, who was there because Plant is on the undercard. I think it's going to help build this fight. And also Canelo match the energy. We haven't seen Canelo go back and forth with an opponent in some while. And every time he does, it seems like Canelo's able to get the better of him and put on some great performances. But it's fun to see 2 guys going back at it. The respect thing is nice, of course. And while there's mutual respect, there's also, hey, we're in the boxing ring. I want to knock your head off. But it's fun for the fans to see someone, hey, even though Canelo's a legend, I'm going to go straight after him. And that's what Berlanga did. And then to see Canelo match the energy, it gave me a newfound excitement for this fight. And I enjoyed Canelo. I always enjoy seeing Canelo speak English and trash talk back in English. His English has gotten really good. So it's a fun thing to see. For Canelo, this fight's interesting. He's in an interesting position as this is his last fight with PBC. He had the Charlo fight and the Munguia fight. Of course, when he signed this fight, everyone thought eventually we'd get the Benavidez fight. Still, that's not in play. He continues to say, I want $200 million for Benavidez. Again, ridiculous. I'm not sugarcoating that. He should fight Benavidez, but at the moment, sadly, that's not what's happening. For Canelo himself, he hasn't had a KO since he became undisputed at 168 against Caleb Plant back in 2021 as well. Of course, knockdown fighters, Munguia, John Ryder, has power, but has not had the knockout in a while. For him, I mentioned this, it's Benavidez and Terence Crawford. Those are the two big names right now. And while I've flip-flopped, I talked about it with Brian Campbell. Check out that interview. I thought Canelo Crawford was happening. And then Crawford fought. I was like, that's not going to happen. And then Canelo the other day, they asked him about it after Canelo had said, lose-lose situation for me, not happening. Come on, what are we doing? Canelo said, oh, that's still a possibility. So I don't know what to think about the Terence Crawford potential fight. It seems like Terence Crawford still wants Canelo, but does Canelo want Terence Crawford? I think Canelo would make a lot of money, and it would keep him away from David Benavidez for a little while. And I think it's an easy fight for him to win, but that's what I think. It's an interesting position because how does Canelo perform in this fight? Because either way, it's going to be Benavidez or Crawford. Are any of those two next? We don't want to see anybody else. You might want to go to 175, rematch Bivol. Good fight. No one wants to see it. It's Benavidez or Crawford at this point for Canelo, which really just puts him in that weird spot of what happens in this fight. How does he perform in this fight? Because say he goes out there, dominates Berlanga. Geez, it's the Canelo we know. Benavidez has moved to 75. Is Crawford going to come up to 68? Obviously, it's a huge payday. But if he dominates, I thought Crawford had his hands full at 54. Going to 68, you might say, I don't know about it. And 68's not the greatest division right now. Is a potential Caleb Plant rematch in play? That's an idea for 68. But if he goes out and struggles with Berlanga, does that make him Canelo less inclined to fight a Benavidez and Crawford and say, you know what, I'll just fight guys with titles here at 68, just stay in this lane, not worrying about anything else? It's such an interesting point. And I talked about Caleb Plant. Let's really quick talk about this undercard that has some fighters on it. Not the greatest, I'd say, matchups, but we're seeing some fighters back in the ring for the first time. One of those fighters is Stephen Fulton. He's back in the ring since his loss to Naoya Inoue back in July of last year. I feel like they're doing Stephen Fulton wrong here. He's headlining the YouTube prelims for the undercard, not even fighting on the Amazon Prime main pay-per-view. I'm a Stephen Fulton fan. I think PBC, Amazon, they're kind of doing him bad here. I think Stephen Fulton should get more airtime than just going to YouTube. But for Fulton, he's facing Carlos Castro. A good fight for him to get back in the ring. Been out for a while. Get back. See what he can do at 22, 26. What his plans are. Rolly Romero. He's back in the ring. Yes, this time no. Not fighting for a title. Fighting against Manuel Jaimes. As Rolly got knocked out by Pitbull Cruz back in March. Headlining Amazon Prime times PBC. Fight that looked bad for Rolly. In-ring interview afterwards. Man, he was kind of looking around like he didn't know what was going on. I'm glad to see Rolly's okay enough to fight again this year. It's a huge fight for him. If he loses this fight, it could be over for Rolly. Of course, his trash talk, his persona, always going to give him opportunities, but in the ring, a must-win fight for him. I mentioned this guy earlier, Caleb Plant fighting Trevor McCumbee. I'm a Caleb Plant fan. I enjoy him. I enjoy the way he backs up his trash talk. The way he trash talks. Him and McCumbee have gone back and forth at each other. For Plant, this is his first fight since the David Benavidez loss back in March of 2023. So he's been out of the ring for a while. And I think win, lose, draw for Edgar Berlanga, a Caleb Plant fight is coming in the next year. I think that's a huge fight. I think the eyes of Berlanga, especially if he puts a solid fight against Canelo, Berlanga versus Plant, that's a really good matchup at 68. Those two guys have gone back at it for a long time. I would really want to see that fight. Plant gets through McCumbee here, gets back in the ring, knocks the ring rust off. Berlanga puts up a solid performance. Honestly, even as long as he doesn't get dominated, I see Plant versus Berlanga coming sometime soon. Finally, we got Erslandy Lara versus Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia back in the ring, going against Lara, a champion. Solid fight here for the co-main. Surprising to see Danny Garcia gets that opportunity. He's been off and out of the ring for a long time. Interesting to see what Garcia has left, but looking forward to it. So while this undercard might not have the best matchups, it has a lot of names that I'm excited to see just back in the ring again. I just want to see these fighters in the ring fighting. You fight, you win, you're going to lead to a big matchup come down the line. That's going to lead us to our main event and what I'm predicting. For me, I mentioned Canelo not having a KO, a stoppage since Caleb Plant in 2021. I think Canelo gets his stoppage in this fight. I'm going knockout rounds 7 through 10. But for me, I'm thinking round 8. Let's go round 8, as I just think Berlanga's defense is really suspect, open to counter shots. One, like the uppercut Canelo delivered against Munguia. Canelo, a good counter puncher. I think Berlanga is just going to be open, and I think it's going to unravel. I think this fight will start off early. Canelo, download data. Berlanga, he'll have a solid few punches. Again, Canelo, one of the best chins I've ever seen. Won't phase him. He'll continue fighting. Eventually, Berlanga's going to be wide open for a shot. And I think Canelo's going to land it. Going to sting Berlanga. It's going to take him a while. And these are rounds 3, 4, 5. Take him a while to get over that shot. And I think in that time, Canelo's just going to break him down, culminating to the 8th round. Just a shot that's going to send Berlanga out of here and end this fight. I mean, as much as I want to say it's about Canelo's power, I think it's just the lack of defense Berlanga has. We'll see if he's tightened that up over his time in training camp. But I think with Canelo, he's just going to be walking forward the entire night. I don't see a possibility where Berlanga is kind of walking down Canelo. I just don't see that happening. So for me, I have Canelo with an 8th round stoppage against Berlanga in a fight that as soon as it concludes, I think Jim Gray will be in the ring for the post-fight interview saying, who's next? Benavidez, Crawford, someone else? And I'll tell you, if Canelo hits Jim Gray with a back to the drawing board, or those guys don't bring anything to the table, it's going to be a long night of saying, come on, Canelo, what are we doing here? But if he gives the answer, any of them, hit my line, let's set it up, we're in for a treat. But come September 14th, I have Canelo Alvarez victorious over Edgar Berlanga with an 8th round knockout. Comment below, how do you think this fight's going to end? Let me know what you think. Make sure follow Never Drop Podcast, to follow Backman Sports on Twitter, subscribe to the Never Drop Podcast. Comment below, like this video, subscribe. I got all sorts of content coming your way. Make sure you subscribe. That's all I got for you today. Canelo, 8th round knockout. That's it from me. Peace.